I'm currently located in Westport, Washington, standing in the lighthouse. What you see in the background is the beautiful Pacific Ocean. However, on days like today, you have weather from increasing ocean storms, which transitions into my video. Since the Industrial Revolution, burning fossil fuels has contributed to a 40% increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Currently, greenhouse gases are trapping heat in Earth's atmosphere, which is causing average temperatures to rise all over the world. Rising temperatures are causing our planet's climate to change. Rising sea level is a threat to people who live near the ocean, like myself. Some low-lying areas will have more frequent flooding, and very low-lying land could be submerged completely. Global climate change threatens coastlines and the buildings and cities located along them. Hundreds of millions of people around the world live in low-lying areas near the coast that could be flooded as the sea level rises, like where I'm currently standing. Rising sea levels will also erode beaches and damage many coastal wetlands. Rising sea levels and stronger storms caused by warmer oceans could completely wipe out certain beaches and islands altogether. Climate change poses risks for cities near the ocean, like Seattle, Miami, New York, New Orleans, and Venice, Italy. If the sea level rises further, many people will lose their homes and could even lose their businesses and jobs. Researcher Benjamin H. Strauss at the organization Climate Central made a rough calculation of the number of people living within 10 meters or 33 feet of sea level. He estimated that 710 million, or about 12% of the world's population, live within that range. He also stated that roughly 1.3 billion, or 21% of the world's population, lives within 82 feet of the sea level. In other words, the kinds of long-term increases in the sea levels that scientists are talking about could wind up displacing a substantial fraction of the human population. Given the immense growth of human settlements near the ocean over the last century, the risks of climate change in this situation are pretty clear. A higher sea level will mean less space at the beach, and a combination of stronger storms and sea level rise could increase the rate of erosion along the coast, and some beaches could disappear altogether. However, urban development keeps increasing in coastal areas. Just past the barriers in the right of the screen is the ocean. The beach behind it erodes more and more every year. Therefore, in time, what you're looking at will be eroded by rising sea levels. Despite that fact being known, urban development in coastal areas keeps growing. Off in the background is a home where people used to live but had to abandon due to rising sea levels and increased coastal storms. Where there now is a waterway located in front of me that leads to rising ocean water, there used to be a road that went to someone's house. However, rising sea levels caused them to abandon their home. Surf unsafe, strong undertow, large waves, no lifeguard. Anyway, this is a road that used to lead to people's houses. However, as you can see, it's now blocked off with the danger sign right where it's at. If you come this way, you'll see why. What we're walking on used to be a main highway that went to a town called Raymond. However, as you can see by the sign that was just behind us, and the fact that the road ends about 40 feet that way, this is no longer a highway. Who knows? in 40 years, where we're at might not even be here. Because 40 years ago, there used to be a highway that went right through here with houses along it. But as you can see, when we go further this way, there's no longer houses here. There's no longer a road here. But what there is a beach. The beach used to be out that way, roughly a mile to a mile and a half away from the road. However, as you can see, the water level is right there now. If sea levels rise more, water is going to keep coming. This right here, as I said, 40 years ago, used to be a well-traveled road, a main highway. But now, it's a dead-end road that leads straight to rising sea levels.
I'm Matt Carroll, a professor in the School of the Environment here at WSU. I'm a natural resource sociologist also with an interest in policy. And so I look at the human dimensions of environmental natural resource problems.
All right. How do you see climate change affecting human populations throughout future years?
Well, I'm certainly no expert, but based on what my biophysical colleagues tell me, I think there could be significant long-term impacts on human populations. And the two that occur to me off the top of my head are rising sea levels in coastal areas, in some places at least, and I don't know which places are most likely to be most highly affected. And the other is drought. In places that are already dry, you could have disastrous water shortages in the future, and you could have therefore a shifting of crops. You know, places where crops can grow now may not be available in the future, and so crops will have to shift around. There's also some literature in the forestry literature that suggests that you're likely to see tree species changing in places where things get hotter and drier. You're going to see different tree species emerging there, and that may have some long-term effects on people as well.
How do you think people in coastal areas will be affected by rising sea levels?
Well, again, I'm not an expert on flooding and sea level change, but clearly, if the sea levels come up, then people who live right in coastal areas are probably going to have to move. It's going to affect local economies in a variety of ways. And what typically happens in situations like this is the most vulnerable people, the people that don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of knowledge, that don't have a lot of power in their lives, the working class, if you will, are going to probably suffer disproportionately to the people that are well off and have the opportunity to adapt and to move. You know, you saw that in New Orleans in the Ninth Ward, and I think you'll see more of that. The kind of differential impacts on the less well-off members of society.
Would you think that continuing to develop urban development near coastal areas is an intelligent thing to do, given that there is evidence that sea levels are rising?
Well, I think obviously there needs to be a whole different kind of planning out there than is being done in a lot of places to plan for the eventuality of all of this. And I've been hearing in the media that New York City is starting to get serious about long-term planning, for example. So doing what we've done in the past, no. Can there be development? I would imagine there can be, but that development might be in different places, and it certainly might look different than it does currently.
If you have any final words of wisdom that you can say about climate change to my generation, what would they be?
Well, I think first of all, there's going to be, it seems to me that it's very likely there's going to be climate change, and it's a reality that needs to be dealt with. And so there's going to have to be both, I think there ought to be some response in terms of fossil fuel use, and also some response in terms of long-term planning. And I think that your generation is going to be the first generation that really feels the brunt of this. And so long-term planning and preparation is really, really important.
What you just saw me do was dig a razor clam. This is an activity that's gone on in this area for many, many years. There's an Indian tribe 8 miles down the road where this is a way of life for them. However, roughly in 40 to 60 years, this area may not be here due to rising sea levels. Climate change threatens a lot of people all around the world. Areas like this, where I'm from, are threatened by rising sea levels. As you can see, there's a house in the background. That's proof right there of one individual in this video who's going to have to relocate their home in future years just from the rising sea alone.
Monty Baker, lived here for the last 7 years, but grew up here as a kid. Came up here every summer from the late 1960s on up. Originally, this road, which is now Washaway, used to go out for a couple miles and come back in over by where the Minute Market is. And there was an old Coast Guard station, lighthouse. There was an old school out there even. When I was a kid and drove out there, there was farms, herds of elk. When my dad grew up, who lived in this house, him and his father would take an old Model A Ford out across the street here and go out for miles in the sand dunes.
Really?
I mean, the ocean was literally a couple miles out.
And now it's 20 feet from the main highway.
Right across the street. What used to be little channels through the mud flats out here is now all wetlands. It floods all the way up to the road right across the street.
Do you fear in future years that
This will be gone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't think there's a doubt. Right around the corner where you see the big rocks piled up, it's also Washaway.
Yep.
It's got a new channel coming in, and it's within the last year, it's making its own stream,
Yep.
heading up, and there's that house there that's going to be going in.
Yeah, that's already condemned.
Yeah.
One house there. What do you think of the attempt of trying to build a jetty? How do you think that?
The jetty,
Because I know that was their attempt to try and slow
right.
the effects from.
The jetty, I think it probably has a longer lasting effect because they did it with the rocks and, built it to actually withstand the ocean and the tides and stuff. I don't know if it's big enough or long enough out to change anything. It sure doesn't look like it. Right now, the tribe and the Marine Corps of Engineers it's taken them 11 years. They started 11 years ago on working for an erosion project out here. They just started this last year, 2012, and an $11 million project to build basically a sandbar out here to stop the erosion.
Stop the erosion.
But they started too late. They got slowed down by a snowy plover. One endangered bird this big that they said they saw on the beach, which was never confirmed, but the state said that. So the whole Marine Corps of Engineers had to pick up and move down farther to Tokeland from where they were all set up to start building and and working and dredging and doing all that. So it threw them off by a few months. They started down in Tokeland. They only got halfway finished. They ran out of money. They were told they can't go any further. And putting a sandbar, which is basically taking the sand that has already been moved by the ocean, picking it up, putting it back where it was, it's not going to last. It was a waste of $11 million. It's not going to do anything to save this, but it was supposed to go from out front here of the reservation all the way down to Tokeland and change the channel back in to where it flows into the Tokeland Bay. So I've been involved with that for the last couple of years of trying to get that finalized to where they try and build, even though I didn't agree with it because I know it's not going to last, just like these poor houses down here that have to fall into the ocean for the homeowners to be able to collect any insurance on it, it has to go in the ocean. They won't pay to have it moved. They won't pay to try and protect it with a rock barrier or anything like that. It's actually physically got to just fall into the ocean, pollute the waters, and then they can get their insurance money. But rather than pick it up, move it, which is very, very feasible and possible to do with homes nowadays, you've got to let it go in, which is crazy to me, but that's insurance companies and the way our system works.
I'm currently located in Grayland, Washington, another coastal area. Over the past 20 years, hurricanes and other tropical storms in the Atlantic Ocean have become stronger. However, we're currently located on the Pacific Ocean, where we've also seen increased effects from coastal storms. As the climate gets warmer, heavier rainstorms and snowstorms with more precipitation than normal are expected to happen more often, and hurricanes around the world can keep getting stronger. When I was a senior in high school, we had a mild storm here that quickly got out of hand, and the winds were over 122 miles an hour, causing a tremendous amount of damage along the coast. Warmer oceans affect weather patterns, in turn causing more powerful storms, and can impact many kinds of sea life, such as coral reefs and fish. As you can see off in the distance, there's a house located very, very close to incoming waves. If the sea level rises roughly 3 to 6 meters and an incoming coastal storm happens, the people may have to leave their home. Here I am located at Washaway Beach, Washington in Pacific County. What you're looking at is a failed attempt to build a jetty or a coastal barrier in order to fight incoming sea levels. There's a continuum of strategies we can use to manage changing sea levels, ranging from armoring the shoreline like you see here in order to keep the sea out, or abandoning low-lying development altogether. Barriers or tidal barrages in order to manage tidal flows in and out of the Bay Area are a good idea. However, they don't always work. As you can see, there's no longer a jetty left here, but you can see down below the metal left from where it was started. Elevated development in which the height of land or existing development is raised and protected with coastal armoring could work in coastal areas. However, it may not be a permanent solution. We have known about the perils of climate change for more than 2 decades, but global efforts to slow it down by reducing greenhouse gas emissions have largely failed. In addition to causing all sorts of problems such as heat waves, droughts, and coastal damage, warmer temperatures could also affect people's jobs, recreational activities, and hobbies. For example, in areas that usually experience cold winters, warmer temperatures could reduce opportunities for skiing, ice fishing, and other winter sports. Also, rising sea levels can wash away beaches. As air temperatures continue to rise, ski season won't last as long.
Well, Barry Moore with the School of the Environment, Washington State University.
How do you see climate change affecting lakes around the world?
Well, you know, it's really difficult to generalize. You have to realize climate change, and that term has been used now rather than global warming, because we certainly see worldwide there's a warming or average increase in temperatures around the earth, but specific locations may experience extended periods of colder weather or more extended periods of warmer weather. So it's very difficult to say what's going to happen in one place is going to happen in all places around the earth. But certainly lakes in where average temperatures can be expected to be higher, and the extremes of those temperatures can be expected to be higher. We certainly would expect to see longer growing seasons potentially, increased temperatures, earlier ice off times, and maybe even years in which you don't have ice cover on lakes. All those, have very profound changes in the internal ecology of the lakes. Certainly one of the most probably prevalent changes would be warmer temperatures and increased growing season would be increased prevalence of blue-green algae. Now, or blue-green bacteria, that can have really profound implications for lake ecology and also for human and animal health as well, related to the blue-greens.
Could you see climate change affecting precipitation patterns around the world?
Well, it certainly will, and one thing that can be expected in warmer climates is that you have more evaporation occurring, particularly over the oceans, and increase in precipitation in many areas. You can have decreases in precipitation in other areas, and certainly what you'd expect to see would be pretty significant changes in the distribution of where that precipitation occurs, and also in the types of precipitation, whether it occurs primarily as snowfall or as rainfall. So again, we can anticipate major climatic changes all across the globe.
Theoretically, if there is less snowpack every year, how will towns that depend on that snowpack for runoff get their water?
That's the great question. Again, this is a real localized problem for particular populations, but that can affect major regions. Most of the western U.S., for example, depends on snowpack and the runoff associated with snowmelt, ultimately for water supply for major, for most of the populations of the western U.S. So, is there going to be interbasin transport of water supplies? There's going to be certainly increased demand on existing water supplies, major allocation problems. So these are certainly very profound types of issues and problems that populations and also natural systems are going to face.
How do you see climate change affecting agriculture?
Again, probably one of the biggest problems for agriculture is not necessarily changes in the average temperatures, it's changes in the pattern of highs and lows that crops are potentially exposed to. So crops that may have been very viable in particular regions may not be successful in those same regions, and we may see kind of a northward creeping of many of the types of crops that are grown, which in some respects might be a positive benefit. On the other hand, I think farmers are going to have to be very adaptable to the types of climates or the changes in climates and the types of crops that will be suitable for those climates. So could be major disruptions in food supply, and certainly major adjustments will be needed to keep the food supply secure.
As a final word of wisdom, if you could say anything to my generation about climate change, what would it be?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems when people look at climate change is there are many naysayers. However, if we look at scientists who deal with these issues, we see that there is a very broad scientific consensus across many disciplines. For example, scientists working with paleo environments, pollen counts in deserts, forests, lake environments, scientists who look at gases and cores coming from glaciers that have been preserved for thousands of years. Certainly we understand that climate change is very real, and over time the Earth has gone through many periods of climate change. So that leads some to conclude, it's a natural phenomena. However, what we see is in the past decade or so, there's been a tremendous acceleration in the rate of climate change, which has never been seen historically. And so we certainly know that climate change is real, and this is something that our generation and upcoming generations are going to have to face. It's going to be a major challenge. So.